when I say awakening, I'm not talking about like, I see dead people, like awakening. I'm talking about the ability to see something for what it is, the ability to shift how you see something or understand something.
Responsibility. It can both add to and take away from the ability to see the joys and the happiness that surrounds you in your life.
Can you give yourself some grace and some compassion and the other person a little bit of both as well, and just let that go and not allow that to be the thing that defines your experience going forward?
Check out that decision making that you did.
Yeah.
Without even necessarily like thinking about the decisions, right?
Yeah.
Like you could have gone full-fledged left into fear, or, do what you did and do the meditation and allow yourself to be open to having a good experience rather than being so sure that it was going to be a fearful, bad experience.
That's so true. Honestly, that's so true because I remember saying this to you and definitely several other people at my job and some of the girls. My number one concern was the perception of others when getting on that horse before going into it. Like looking back at it now, I kept repeating, I'm scared about, or I'm fearful about getting on the horse for the first time. Like, am I going to just flop on over on the other side of the horse from where I get on? Or, am I going to like really like try to jump and I can't get up? And I think a lot of it had to do with an insecurity in me about my size and other people seeing that. But it was interesting to listen to my thoughts in those moments, or reflect now, especially back on my thoughts in those moments of the things that I allowed to block my potential of happiness, which I think a lot of us do. I think a lot of us really feel like we can't do something, and we're shocked when it happens.
Right. Or you have to set an expectation to meet a certain goal or achievement to allow yourself to experience that happiness.
Absolutely.
Responsibility in general can both add to and take away from the ability to see the joys and the happiness that surrounds you in your life. One of the things that I equate or connect responsibility to is when we are making a lot of money. And so I know that is something that people will say a lot is, well, if I'm rich, then I can be happy. Once I make that $1 million, well, that's probably when I'll be happy or experience happiness. And the catch-22 with that is when you start making more money, you start spending on more things. And then all of a sudden these material items become responsibilities that you have to take care of.
Yeah. And then your entire happiness starts becoming grounded in materialistic items. Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong. I think that financial security can be very helpful in relieving a lot of stress that can interfere with the experience of happiness.
Oh, yeah.
Like that to me, like financial stability to me is helpful to make me feel more secure. And again, kind of clear the way to focus on the present moment and the things that bring me joy. But I'm not saying that an abundance of money is actually what will make somebody happy, but rather maybe the experiences that you can get or buy with that money.
Yeah, no, I agree. I will say, for me, I started off lower middle class, right? There were times that I had to borrow from friends or hide my car in a garage so it didn't get repoed. And, it was awful. It was absolutely awful. Some of that was my own doing, where in order to escape my reality, I was drinking and spending money on that instead of like taking care or saving, And so there's a good amount of joy that I had though, in those times. The amount of fun that I had during those years, I definitely feel like I felt more free back then than I do now, and now that I do make a pretty good living and I don't have financial worry right now, and that I'm grateful for. And it's not grateful because it got handed to me. It's grateful that I worked my ass off to get here, you know, and a bit of a self-proud type
Yeah.
situation. But I'm definitely more stressed out. I definitely have way more responsibility than I think I want. And my connections to other people have been drastically affected. I don't see my friends very often. I don't see my family very often. I can afford trips whenever I want to, but I can't take time to do it. I don't make the time to do it.
That's such a conundrum.
It is. And so, you know, was watching this video, and it was based off of the Harvard study of adult development that started back in 1938. Mm-hmm. And, you know, there's this guy that's doing street interviews and asking questions like, what does happiness mean to you? And a lot of them had mentioned the money factor that you were talking about towards the end, where they go back and they say more so what the happiness factor was. And a lot of people said, my relationships. And they also talk about the study of being in a good relationship or being surrounded by those that you are happy with, the connections with others.
Those that you can trust and rely on and be real with and open up and share things that are personal and,
Right.
you know,
Right.
stressful or upsetting and, you know, feeling safe
Yeah. Yeah.
with them. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And how, and I'm looking at notes down here, but how two of the biggest takeaways was taking care of your physical health and relationships that keep us happier or feeling well connected to others.
And to clarify, it's not a quantity of relationships, but the quality of relationships.
Yes.
So people like, you know, we hear about the introverts and the extroverts all the time. And this study I thought was really interesting because they said that neither one had a more significant risk of being unhappy. It's just the extroverts may have more friendships that are meaningful, whereas the introverts may have a smaller group that are meaningful.
Right.
But they're still both quantifiably similar as far as their happiness level. It's just some people really re-energize with more people.
Yeah.
I would say to my mom, "Are you still there?" And now I know why, right? Because I was afraid that I was going to be left. But I would say, "Are you still there?" And she'd be like, "Yeah, I'm just in the other room. Just go to sleep. It's okay." But what was happening was I was feeling like there were people around me. And I could tell you if they were men or women, and I could tell you what they looked like, and I could tell you all these things. And at the time, I couldn't physically see them. I could see them in my mind, and I could hear them with audibly, out loud, the way I hear you. And they would say things to me like, "I don't mean to bother you, but I just need your help with this." Or, "Are you okay with talking to me?" And I was so freaked out that I was like, what the heck is happening? So I would run into my mom's room crying hysterically that there were people in my room that I couldn't see, but I could hear them. And that's when she sat me down. And I think she had good intentions, but she was like, "You're probably schizophrenic."
Oh.
And what that means is that you see and hear things that aren't real, but it's an illness. You're sick. And I was like, okay. So then I was 5. So this went on until I was in high school. And when I was in high school, I never really thought I was sick. I always thought I'm seeing dead people. It was just this knowing that I had in me that like, these people around me can't understand what's going on, but I know what's happening here. Mm-hmm. So I started to tell a few people in high school, and they made fun of me and they didn't believe me. And what really solidified this feeling for me was I was a party kid, and we were at a party. I grew up in San Diego, and so we were under a freeway passing, which is a weird place to have a party, but I digress. And
it's what we did back then.
Yeah. What were we thinking? Like, what's happening? We can't go to somebody's house? Anyway, so we're outside, we're under a freeway passing. And I remember talking to my friend and watching like a movie play out in front of me, right? And she was trying to talk to me, but I was so distracted. I was just kept looking at what was going on up on the freeway. And a guy came over and was like, "Did you guys hear what happened here?" And I said, "Don't say another word to me. Don't say another word." And I looked at my friend and I said, you realize that I didn't hear any of that, right? And she said, yes. I said, come over here. So I took her away from everybody and I told her, what I keep seeing is a cop pulling over a young girl. He raped her. He threw her off the side. She's dead. Something happened and her dad is up there and he's thinking about killing himself. I don't know what happened since then. So we go back to the party and they recant the story of what exactly I just said. And she looks at me like just pale. And she said, how do you know that? And I said, because I'm watching it happen right in front of me right now. And she just was like, holy crap. Like something else is happening here that we can't, I don't know what's going on, right? So if you research it, it's, I forget the girl's name, which is just terrible, but basically it's the reason that you have the law that states you have the ability to pull over in a well-lit area because her parents passed that law. So this happened in, I believe, the 80s, but that's essentially what I was watching happen in front of me. Yeah. And so, yeah. So for a long time, that's what it was like. It was like watching a movie play, but knowing that it wasn't happening right now, it had already happened and I was just watching something happen.
Wow. That's wild.
In the beginning, when I started doing trans channeling, which is when you go into a trans state, it was nice because I was completely gone. Like I can recount memories of being somewhere else, being at the beach, feeling the ocean on my face, hearing the waves, not even remembering the conversations that were going on around me. And there are videos, I'm sure there are videos out there, of when I come back into my body going into full hysterics and full breakdown because I can feel the difference of how heavy it is to actually be a human and how there's no other word for it. It's just heavy. It's heavy on your heart. It's heavy on your physical body. It's heavy emotionally. It's just so much to carry. And so after a conversation with them, they decided that that wasn't good for my mental state. So now I'm very present when they're there and I'm more in the conversation, sometimes more than I want to be, but I'm always there now and I'm always a part of it. And they call me out sometimes. And yeah, now it just feels like I can hear what's going on with the conversation, but I have more control of, I'm more aware of what my body is going through. Like if I have to cough, I know it. Or if like my nose itches, I can feel them move my hand to itch my nose. I'm not completely gone.
A lot of what I have just experienced, so we could share this story with you guys to the best of my ability, and share that type of just thought process, right? Is that my hope for myself in the future is that I can walk into another situation, or if a situation occurs that has like a similar leaving the room with those types of feelings moment, right? That maybe I can have a little bit more of the ability to end something with love and not end it feeling the way that I felt.
Yeah.
Right. So
we have a guest making an appearance right now. It's Webster.
I mean, he literally just like came from the floor on the other side all the way over to you, knocks over the tissue, like decides that he's going to come on. It's like out of nowhere.
Yeah. Thank you, buddy.
Yeah. You don't do that with your mom. I don't understand.
She needs it right now.
Right?
She needs it more.
Trying to hold back tears. You go to my friend. Anyway, so I love that dog. Yeah, so what was I saying? It is one of those things where like I just hope that for those of you listening, for those of you watching, that if you have this kind of a situation in your life, best described as holding a grudge towards somebody else, I'm not encouraging you to initiate a conversation and befriend somebody that's done you wrong and like all that stuff. I'm not saying that. What I am saying though is that can you give yourself some grace and some compassion and the other person a little bit of both as well and just let that go? and not allow that to be the thing that defines your experience going forward. Um, I feel like there's a lot of lessons in my lifetime, and I'm sure many people can relate to this, where feeling deceit in any kind of a relationship and then being able to overcome it, let go of it, learn from it, and then move forward and still hold yourself into a place of compassion, love, empathy, sympathy, grace, whatever. And I'm not saying that I'm not authorizing any type of thing in my life that says, yeah, come on in, do me wrong. Like
Mhm.
that's not
Mhm.
it. I'm just saying that, like, to be able to uphold myself and say that I can move forward in my life and hopefully have learned from this experience in that way.
I think that that's one of the beautiful things about forgiveness is you don't have to have that direct conversation with somebody. All it takes is having that conversation with yourself. You can forgive other people, you can forgive yourself. It does not require that other person to be involved in that.
Right.
It's again, we're clearing space with forgiveness. We're clearing space so we can heal, so we can fill that space with what makes us feel loved and is amplified by our love.
Right. It was interesting to me going through the experience that we've been referring to today. Um, there was a lot of being brought together with past um, relationships. And these were not small relationships in this part of my life. These were very big relationships. These were very um, family feeling, right? And I was reminded about all the good. I was reminded about all the joyful moments. But what surprised me the most, because that part didn't surprise me, but what surprised me the most was finding out the impacts I'm still making on those individual lives, even though I haven't spoken to some of them in like 20 years. I had no idea the trajectory of a single moment would take someone else or even myself. And that part alone was pretty awe inspiring. And so sometimes when we say even the smallest moment can carry the biggest weight, we mean it in that way, right? Because you don't know. You're not there to always see it. But then sometimes it comes back and it presents itself to you and it tells you exactly what happened. And that part's pretty wild. I have this mindset currently where I remember what it was like to be in fight or flight to the point that I was sick and I was actually fighting for my life. And I don't want to go back there. And so I acknowledge that every day that I feel that anxiety building up in me, that my body is in that response and
Mhm.
I have to do something about it. So I have decided to sign myself up with a therapist, and
Yay.
you guys might actually know who she is because she's been on our podcast before. But her name is Barbara, and she did my past life regression. And I never went back to her to tell her what happened after that because literally 3 weeks later was when I was diagnosed. I honestly like. I have come to realize, and Carrie and I have talked about this. There's been times where we are trying to determine where we can release the stretching of the rubber band, so to speak. This podcast is extremely important to us, and it's important to us to spread the information that we spread and like help others achieve their goals in life and become healthier, more self aware in order to achieve their self love and their love within. Because it's been such a profound journey for us and has made such a profound impact on us and our relationships and how we
Mhm.
go about our days. But, like she said, sometimes we have these brick wall moments where we're like, can't possibly squeeze one more thing in. I
I would Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
But to clarify our spiritual journey, honestly, like, and it almost made it sound like we reached that point, but in reality, it's an ongoing journey. of spirituality, and there's ebbs and flows in how we practice, when we practice, what we practice. And so it's a constant growth process, and there's no end to it. I just recently started working out again. And I
Mhm.
was thinking about that when you were talking about the things that we do to help ourselves. And I took like an 8-month hiatus from that. And I had to think about it for like 3 or 4 months, and I had to consider all my mental or physical barriers that I knew I would allow to get in the way from me, moving my body. And so I had to take some time to really evaluate that. And then it's don't get me wrong, like, it wasn't just a flip of a switch. The actions may appear that way because I've been going consistently, but every day it's been a struggle to talk myself into it. But once I get there, I love it. Like, I
Yeah.
feel so good afterwards. And I think some of that is recognizing, again, what your goals are. Like, not just like, "Oh, I wanna lose 10 pounds," but I wanna feel energized. I wanna feel like I can move without restrictions. I wanna be able to sleep better at night. I want my blood pressure to improve. Whatever it is, it's making more defined reasons why. Because when you have those days where you don't wanna do the thing of taking care of yourself, it's remembering why you're doing it and the detailed reasons why.
Yeah, those
So that
details
you're
matter.
Mhm, absolutely. So whether it's you wanna live longer to be able to walk your child down the aisle, or you wanna be able to play with your kids, you wanna take your dog for a run, whatever it is that you want out of it, keeping that at the forefront of your mind so that you understand and don't forget why you're doing the things that you are doing to take care of yourself.
I like the thought process of breaking the patterns of all the things that no longer serve us.
Mhm.
And that seems to be my biggest motivator than all. It's like I can be a certain individual and I can say and feel a certain way, and that's okay. And I'm not going to be mad at myself for that. But if I don't like it and I want to make a change, then I have to be the person that implements that change and not wait for others to implement it for me. And I think that that's been a really big lesson in my life, like the reaching out and hoping that it's somebody else that's going to come in and sorry for my French, but Captain Save a Ho,
Yeah.
and that's and but I mean, at the end of the day, I'm my own hero in this
Mm.
story, right?
Amen to that.
I've got my own little cape flying in the back in the wind, like that's and it's sparkly and it's awesome. I was feeling something ancient.
Mm.
Like I was on Earth, but on ancient land and experiencing things from a much different perspective and way of looking at it. And that was kind of like how I was experiencing it. And then I remember actually experiencing it. They gave me a reference to like the way the sand works with the wind and things like that. And I was even experiencing it from something as ancient as the sand.
Like the perspective of the sand.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Then even coming out of that, because they left me off with a really funny message and commented about how easier it was for me to connect today because I was on a couple hours of sleep. And I was like, yeah, I'm surprised I didn't start snoring. um, but then I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to take the guidebook, flip it, and then we're just going to see what the topic's going to be today. And then it literally, and I had my eyes closed when I did it, and it literally lands on the very first card that I pulled out of a deck of cards that I've never used before that I just opened today, which was the one with the ancestor message in it. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, man.
Mhm. And part of that message was actually talking about transitions
Yes. Yes.
and having the choice to experience from different perspectives and having the awareness even or encouraging the awareness of just because it doesn't always feel good, there is always good connected to it, and it's kind of our choice
Yeah.
to become aware. It's not always a passive thing, just becoming aware. Sometimes it is,
Yeah.
but sometimes we have to take an active step in zooming out and being like, okay, What am I missing here? How else is this connected? How else will this benefit me, even though it doesn't necessarily feel good in the moment?
Yeah.
And it made me think of like when we get in an argument with somebody,
Yeah.
that doesn't feel good in the moment, but it can lead to something good, a shift in the relationship to work harder towards building each other up or loving each other deeper. And so even though something doesn't feel good always in the moment or happen the way you are hoping or thinking it should, there's still potential for seeing the positive
Yeah.
that it can result in.
When I was in that meditative state or trance state, honestly, because I was so tired, I was like, bye. So when I was in that trance state, I literally was feeling this connection. So they were showing me this grain of sand and how on one side of this little tiny speck of sand, how it's shiny on one side and how it can be dull on the other, but how the wind can pick it up and move it across the ground and flip it over at any point in time to be on either the shiny side or the dull side. And how when you are at a different perspective and you look down at all the grains of sand, everything just sparkles. You might not even necessarily pick up that there's dull grains of sand because your perspective is so much higher looking down at the collective. And how the dull side of the sand and the sparkly side or the shiny side of the sand connected to one another can still create this beautiful picture for all to see. And then the wind itself, and they gave me some reference into how the wind can be an assistant and how, from this grain of sand's perspective, one grain of sand could look at it and be like, oh, I worship the wind because it does everything that we need it to do and it carries us. And then the next grain of sand could be like, well, my perspective of this is just what it does. It's just here to help all the time, whenever we need it. And it was just such an interesting, like, intricate conversation in something so what we don't even like pay attention to from this level, right? So anyway, I was thinking about that and then the connection of that with change and the transition into the awareness, right? And I do feel like that's something that is really happening at the collective level.
I agree.
Just so much more so than what we've seen in the past, and at least with me, at least on the planet. But I'm sure the person that like first flew the airplane over was like, dude, we're so advanced, so perspective, right? But anyway, so I mean, but I do think that there's this like awakening awareness. And when I say awakening, I'm not talking about like, I see dead people, like awakening, or, I can hear, my spirit guides loud and clear audibly. Like, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the ability to see something for what it is, the ability to shift how you see something or how you understand something.
I just got the visual of removing the blinders.
Yeah. Yeah.
The blinders being what keeps you focused on the scary, the negative, the lack.
Yeah. It's intriguing to me because I know that a lot of people can easily step into like a fear-based thought process. And I've had my moments. This is not a judgment thing at all. This is I'm right along with you guys.
We're human and we're taught about these things, and it's inundated with it throughout social media and the news and all those other things to keep you in that fear-based place.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just training after training after training of it. And so, but I feel like a lot of people are really wanting to break away from that icky feeling of that fear state. And because of that, I think a lot of people are also aligning towards this goal of, can we be human? And can we be that sand and that wind that just play within one another, that help each other in this collective state, and a flow that just goes along with it, and seeing it from that leap, right? Versus I'm just the sand that needs to worship the air because that air does something for me, right?
It's like you mentioned earlier, the give and take. Mm-hmm. That was a big part of the message that you received in the trance meditation. And I got the word fluidity because it's very easy to get rigid in our beliefs, in our fears, in what we believe to be the right way of living or acting or being or doing. And it can be freeing to allow for that fluidity, to be able to step back and be like, do I need to react in this moment? Yeah. Or can I just like take a beat and reflect and be like, how else can I see this? Can I step back and see maybe somebody else's perspective so I can understand why they're reacting in this way? You know, because it'd be great if we could all just like wave a magic wand and all of us be like, yay, I can see the light from different perspectives of the prism. That'd be cool. But the reality of it is not everybody's going to be able to let go of that rigidity.
Right. I feel like when I was in that connection, when I was having this experience as the sand, and quickly, very rapidly flipping back and forth between the grain that worshipped the air versus the grain that aligned with the air and, you know, was fluid with the air. And one felt restrained, right? Like it didn't know that it could be itself and just go with the flow. And the other felt so light and free. Well, if you are enjoying our content and our episode today, please hit that like and subscribe to our channel. Make sure you hit the notification bell as well so you can stay notified of any and all future content that we have.
We also have social media, y'all.
We do.
It's Love Always Self on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube Shorts. You can also find our website at lovealwaysself.com.
And on that note,
don't forget to love first,
love last,
and love always.
Bye, everybody.
Hey, listener, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us in this moment. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we look forward to our next connection.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow to stay notified of new content from Love Always Self. If you have any questions or topics you'd like for us to discuss, please hit us up on any of our social media platforms linked in the show notes below.
I'm Karista.
And I'm Shyra.